I came home early from a business trip on a Tuesday afternoon, exhausted and looking forward to a quiet evening. But the moment I opened the heavy oak front door, the smell hit me. It wasn't the smell of dinner cooking, it was the sharp, acrid scent of burning leather and old paper. Panic flared in my chest. I dropped my briefcase in the hallway and ran toward the living room, convinced that an ember had popped out of the fireplace and ignited the rug. I burst into the room, breathless, ready to grab the fire extinguisher. There was no emergency. There was only my stepmother, Veronica, standing by the fireplace with a glass of red wine in her hand. She was watching the flames dance with a small, satisfied smile. I looked into the hearth and froze. In the center of the fire, curling and turning to ash, was a stack of leather-bound books. I recognized the faded blue cover of the top one immediately. It was my mother's journal from the year she was pregnant with me. I screamed, a raw sound that tore from my throat, and lunged toward the fire. Veronica stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Stop it, Kian," she said, her voice dripping with boredom. It was time to declutter. We can't live in a mausoleum forever. I fell to my knees, watching my mother's handwriting turn black and disintegrate. My hands were covered in soot as I tried to rake the ashes out of the fireplace, but it was too late. They were gone. Every memory, every private thought my mother had written down during her battle with cancer, was gone. When my father, Thomas, walked through the door an hour later, I was still shaking with rage. I confronted him immediately, holding up a charred piece of leather. "She burned them, Dad. She burned Mom's diaries." I expected him to be furious. I expected him to kick her out. Instead, Veronica sighed theatrically. "Oh, Thomas, they were moldy. I found them in the attic box. It was a health hazard. I was just trying to protect the family from black mold." It was a lie. They had been in a sealed plastic bin. My father looked at me, his eyes tired and clouded. He was so blinded by his love for this younger woman that he couldn't see the cruelty. "Kian, stop being so dramatic," he said, loosening his tie. "Veronica was just cleaning. It's just old paper. Let it go." He walked past me to pour himself a drink. I looked at Veronica. She didn't look at my father. She looked at me and mouthed the word, "loser." 2 days passed, and the silence in the house was suffocating. I couldn't look at Veronica without feeling a violent urge to scream, so I focused on work. I worked for my father's logistics company, managing the IT security. That afternoon, my father called me into his home office. "Kian, I need a favor," he said, squinting at a document. "I left my reading glasses in the car. Can you get the property deed for the warehouse out of the wall safe? I need to verify the lot number." I nodded, keeping my face blank. I had installed the security system myself 3 years ago. I knew the combination, though my father assumed I never used it. I walked over to the painting of the ship, swung it aside, and punched in the code. The heavy steel door clicked open. I reached in to grab the deed, but my hand brushed against a thick, bright blue folder. The label on the spine read, "Prenuptial Agreement, Veronica." My father was busy on a phone call, his back to me. I stared at the folder. A dark, dangerous idea began to form in the back of my mind. I didn't steal the folder right then. That would have been too risky. Instead, while my father argued with a supplier on the phone, I quickly pulled the blue folder out and opened it. I snapped high-resolution photos of the key pages with my phone, then shoved it back into the safe and handed my father the deed. Later that night, locked in my bedroom, I analyzed the photos. The legalese was dense, but the terms were clear. My father's wealth was held in a dynastic trust, which meant all premarital assets were protected by state law and would remain his in a divorce. However, this specific prenup overrode that protection. It stated that if the marriage lasted for 5 years, Veronica was entitled to a loyalty payout of $10 million, regardless of the trust. But there was a catch, an infidelity clause. If she cheated, the prenup was void. If the prenup didn't exist at all, the trust laws would default, and she would get nothing. I looked at the calendar. Their 5-year anniversary was exactly 2 months away. I knew my father was old school. He didn't trust the cloud. He insisted on keeping physical copies of important documents. But I also knew Veronica was paranoid. She wouldn't trust my father to keep the only copy of her $10 million ticket. She had to have her own. I needed to find it. I waited until Thursday, the day she spent 4 hours at the day spa getting mud wraps and massages. I went into the master bedroom. I knew exactly where she kept her valuables. It was in the bottom drawer of her vanity, the one she always kept locked. I wasn't a thief, but I had learned how to pick simple locks from YouTube videos back in college when I locked myself out of my dorm. I used a tension wrench and a paperclip. It took 5 minutes of sweating and cursing, but the lock finally clicked. I slid the drawer open. Underneath piles of gold jewelry and silk scarves lay a matching blue folder. Veronica's copy. I held her financial future in my hands, and it felt heavy. Before I made my move, I had to be absolutely certain there wasn't a third copy floating around. If the lawyers had a digital backup, my plan would fail, and I would go to jail for theft. I called the family law firm, posing as my father's executive assistant. "Hi, this is Kian calling for Thomas. We need a digital copy of the prenuptial agreement sent over for review." The paralegal on the other end hesitated. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Kian. You know about the ransomware attack we had 2 months ago, right? Our entire archive server was wiped. We are still trying to recover files, but anything older than a year is currently inaccessible." My heart skipped a beat. "So, you don't have it?" "Not digitally," she confirmed. "We sent the original wet signature documents to your father for safekeeping while we upgraded our security. He should have both authentic copies." The stars had aligned. There were only 2 legally binding copies in existence, and they were both inside this house. I moved quickly. I took Veronica's copy from her vanity drawer and relocked it. Then, I went downstairs to the office. My father was at the golf course. I opened the safe again. I took the blue folder containing my father's copy. I didn't want the safe to look empty, so I took a stack of blank printer paper and placed it inside the blue folder, leaving it on the shelf exactly where it had been. To the naked eye, nothing had changed. I took both authentic legal documents, the only proof that Veronica was entitled to $10 million, down to the basement utility room where we kept the industrial shredder. I turned the machine on. It hummed with a menacing growl. I fed the pages through one by one. I watched the signatures, the notary stamps, and the $10 million clause get chewed into confetti. It mirrored exactly how she had watched my mother's diaries burn. I didn't feel guilt. I felt a cold, hard satisfaction. The documents were gone, but the clock was ticking. The 5-year anniversary was in 8 weeks. If they stayed married past that date, she might convince my father to update his will or create a new contract. I needed them divorced, and I needed it to happen now. I needed to trigger the infidelity clause. Even though the contract was gone, the act of cheating would ensure my father had the emotional resolve to leave her. I hired a private investigator named Silas. He wasn't the trench coat type. He was young, handsome, and drove a rented Ferrari. I paid him a retainer from my own savings. "I don't want you to frame her," I told him. "I just want you to present an opportunity. She goes to the Sapphire Club every Friday night. Go there, pose as a tech investor. See if she bites." I knew Veronica. She was greedy, and she was bored. It took less than a week. Veronica was predictable. She saw the Ferrari valet parked out front, and she saw Silas buying expensive scotch at the bar. I watched the surveillance footage Silas sent me later that night. Veronica approached him. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Within 20 minutes, she was leaning close to him, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm. The audio recording from Silas's lapel mic was damning. "So, are you married?" Silas asked. "Technically," Veronica purred, sipping her martini. "But he's a boring old wallet. I'm just waiting for my settlement, and then I'm a free woman." Hearing her call my father a wallet made my blood boil. I saved the clip. I didn't show my father yet. He was stubborn. If I showed him this, he might just yell at her. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to catch her in the act so there would be no going back. The weeks flew by. It was now 1 week before their 5-year anniversary. Veronica was practically vibrating with excitement. She knew the date. She knew the money was about to vest. She planned a lavish dinner party at the house to celebrate 5 years of bliss. It was nauseating. At dinner, She stood up and clinked her glass. To Thomas, she beamed, looking like the picture of a devoted wife. My rock, my love. Under the table, her phone buzzed with a text from Silas. I knew because Silas had texted me a screenshot. She was arranging to meet him later that week for a private celebration. I sat across from her, cutting my steak. I raised my glass. To memories, I said, staring right at her. She looked confused by my good mood, shrinking back slightly. She thought she had won. She had no idea the game had changed. The trap was set for Thursday night. Silas invited Veronica to the penthouse suite of the downtown luxury hotel, a suite I had paid for. Veronica told my father a lie that was so lazy it was insulting. My friend Jessica is having a crisis, she said, putting on her coat. I'm going to stay with her tonight to make sure she's okay. My father nodded, trusting her completely. Okay, honey, call me if you need anything. As soon as her taillights disappeared down the driveway, I stood up. Dad, get in the car. What? Why? Just get in the car. I need to show you something. I drove him to Jessica's house first. It was dark, no cars in the driveway. No one was home. My father looked confused. Maybe they went out. They didn't, I said. I pulled up the GPS tracker app on my phone, the one connected to the family car she was driving. She's at the Grand Hotel. My father was in denial the whole drive to the hotel. She's probably just having drinks there, he muttered, clutching the door handle. You've always hated her, Kian. You're trying to ruin this. I didn't argue. I just parked the car. We walked to the front desk. Because the room was booked under our company's corporate account, a detail I had arranged with Silas, I simply showed my ID and asked for a duplicate key card. My partner forgot his key, I told the clerk. We took the elevator to the top floor in silence. My father was sweating. We stood outside room 402. I tapped the card. The light turned green. I pushed the door open. We didn't catch them in bed, but it was almost worse. They were on the balcony, wrapped in a romantic embrace, a bottle of champagne on the table. Veronica was kissing his neck. My father made a sound like a wounded animal. Veronica froze, turning around. Her face went white. Silas winked at me, grabbed his jacket, and walked out without a word. The drive home was silent, but the explosion happened the moment we walked through the front door. Veronica didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She realized she had been caught, so she dropped the mask completely. She stood in the foyer, her face twisted in a snarl. Fine, she screamed at my father. I'm done. I am done babysitting you, Thomas. You are boring, you are old, and you smell like mothballs. My father slumped against the wall, looking 10 years older. I want a divorce, she yelled, and I want my payout. I've put in my 5 years, almost to the day. I am taking you for everything you are worth. She was arrogant. She was screaming because she believed she had a $10 million safety net in that safe. She marched upstairs to pack a bag, shouting that she would bleed the company dry by Monday morning. The next morning, the house was quiet. My father sat at the kitchen table, staring into his coffee. He looked broken. Then, his phone rang. It was Veronica's lawyer. She hadn't wasted a second. They were sending a formal demand letter for the $10 million, citing the prenuptial agreement. My father sighed, a sound of total defeat. I just want her gone, Kian, he whispered. I don't care about the money anymore. If $10 million is the price to get her out of my life, I'll pay it. Don't pay her a dime, Dad, I said, pouring myself some juice. I followed him, leaning against the doorframe, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My father knelt in front of the wall safe. He spun the dial, left, right, left. The heavy door clicked open. He reached in and pulled out the thick blue folder labeled, Prenuptial Agreement, Veronica. He walked over to his desk, put on his glasses, and opened it. He froze. He flipped the page, then another. He looked up at me, confusion etched on his face. It's blank, he said. What? I asked, feigning innocence. It's just printer paper, he said, his voice rising. He ran back to the safe. He pulled out the deeds, the passports, the cash. He shook the folders. It's gone. The contract is gone. He looked at me. Kian, did you move the file? I looked him dead in the eye. I haven't touched the safe, Dad. But you know Veronica had the combination too. Maybe she took it to her lawyer. My father grabbed his phone and called Veronica. He put it on speaker. Where is the contract? He demanded. Veronica laughed, a harsh, grating sound. I don't have it, you old fool. It's in your safe. Stop playing games and write the check. It's not in the safe, Veronica. It's gone. There was a pause. Don't lie to me, Thomas. I am not lying. The folder is empty. I heard the shift in her breathing. She genuinely thought he was hiding it. You're trying to screw me. She shrieked. Then, I heard a crashing sound on her end, like she was throwing things. She was checking her jewelry box. She was looking for her copy. You stole it, she screamed, her voice cracking with pure terror. You broke into my vanity. You stole my copy. I haven't been in your room. My father yelled back. You have lost your mind. A week passed in a legal standoff. Veronica's lawyer filed a motion claiming the contract existed and that my father had destroyed it. But in court, claims require proof. My father's lawyer, revitalized by the turn of events, retorted simply, my client denies destroying any document. The burden of proof is on the plaintiff to produce the contract. Without the physical document, the legal situation shifted entirely. The lawyer explained it to us in the living room. Without the prenup to override it, we revert to the state law regarding the dynastic trust. The trust explicitly states that all premarital assets are separate property. Veronica is entitled to 0% of the business, the real estate, or the savings. My father looked stunned. So, she gets nothing. She gets what she came in with, the lawyer said, which, according to our records, is a used Honda and some credit card debt. The reality hit Veronica hard. 2 days later, she showed up at the house uninvited. She looked disheveled. The arrogance was gone. She tried to push past me at the door to get to my father. Thomas, please, she sobbed, throwing herself at his feet. It was a mistake. I was angry. I love you. Let's forget the lawyers. My father looked down at her. For the first time in 5 years, the fog had lifted. He saw her for what she was, a parasite. Get up, he said coldly. You don't love me. You love the safe. He pulled a check out of his pocket. My lawyer said I don't owe you anything. But I'm a generous man. He handed her the check. It was for $50,000. This is a settlement to go away. Take it, or we go to trial and you get zero. She looked at the check, then at him. She spit on the floor. I want my $10 million. She screamed. I earned it. Veronica refused the settlement. She sued, claiming specifically that I, Kian, must have destroyed the document because of the bad blood between us. She dragged me into a deposition. I sat across from her aggressive lawyer, calm and collected. Did you destroy the prenuptial agreement? The lawyer asked, trying to stare me down. I leaned into the microphone. Why would I destroy a document that protects my father's assets? I asked. Usually, prenups protect the wealthy spouse, not the other way around. If the prenup existed, it would likely limit her payout, not guarantee it. It makes no rational sense for me to destroy a document that keeps my family safe. The logic was sound to an outsider. They didn't know about the specific $10 million clause. The lawyer was stumped. He had no evidence, no motive that made sense to the court, and no paper. That night, my father was sitting by the fire, looking at the empty space where the diaries used to be. He was sad. I knew I had to break the last of his emotional attachment to her. Dad, I said gently, I didn't lose all the diaries. He looked up. What? I pulled a folded, charred piece of paper from my wallet. It was the single page I had managed to snatch from the fire in Chapter 1. I handed it to him. It was an entry from 6 years ago. I don't trust Thomas's new assistant, Veronica. I think she is stealing office supplies. I saw her putting the expensive pens in her purse. She has shifting eyes. It was a small, petty thing. But reading my mother's handwriting, hearing her voice warn him from the grave, broke him. He realized Veronica had always been a thief. He crumpled the paper and threw it into the fire. She gets nothing, he whispered. Desperate, Veronica tried one last move. She forged a copy of the prenup. She must have found a template online. She presented it to the court, claiming she found her copy in a safety deposit box. I was ready for this. I had hired a forensic document expert weeks ago, anticipating she might try a forgery. The expert analyzed the paper in court. The watermarking on this paper stock, the expert testified, holding up the sheet, indicates it was manufactured in 2024. The date on the contract is 2019. It is physically impossible for this document to be 5 years old. Veronica went pale. She had been caught committing perjury. The judge looked at her with pure disdain. The final ruling came down like a hammer. The judge was furious about the forgery and the wasted court time. Due to the plaintiff's attempt to defraud the court, the judge announced, and the complete lack of a valid prenuptial agreement, the divorce will proceed under standard trust law. The gavel banged. The trust was impenetrable. Veronica got nothing. No alimony, because of the short marriage and the proven infidelity. No lump sum. No house. She was leaving the marriage with less than she arrived with, because now she had legal fees she couldn't pay. A month later, I was driving through the downtown district when I stopped at a red light. I looked over at the pawn shop on the corner. I saw Veronica's car parked out front. I pulled over and walked to the window. Inside, Veronica was arguing with the broker. She was trying to sell the diamond tennis bracelet my father had given her for their second anniversary. She looked tired. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. She turned and saw me through the glass. She froze. I walked inside. The bell on the door chimed. "You did this," she hissed, clutching the bracelet. "You burned it." "I know you did." I stepped close to her, invading her personal space so the pawnbroker couldn't hear. "I didn't just burn it, Veronica," I whispered. "I watched it turn to ash. I watched the $10 million curl up and turn black, just like you watched my mother's memories burn." Her eyes widened. The realization hit her. It wasn't about the money for me. It wasn't about the business. "Paper for paper," I said, smiling coldly. "Ash for ash." She slumped against the counter, clutching the cheap receipt the broker handed her. She had destroyed the only thing that mattered to me, so I destroyed the only thing that mattered to her. I returned home as the sun was setting. The house felt lighter, the air cleaner. My father was sitting by the fireplace, but he wasn't drinking. He was writing. I walked over. He was holding a brand new leather-bound journal. "For new memories," he said, looking up at me. He smiled, and he looked younger than he had in years. "That's a good start, Dad," I said. I walked into the office. I opened the wall safe one last time. I reset the digital combination to a code only I knew. I closed the heavy steel door and spun the handle. The past was buried, the leech was gone, and the family legacy was finally safe.